And I had always been one of those mothers that nursed my babies at least 2 years, one quite a bit longer, because that made me a better mother, you know. Well, in the fear and the depression, I didn't have any milk for that little guy. I used to keep Joey all covered up so nobody could see how skinny he was. That was the saddest thing I've ever experienced in my life, because that was my worth as a mother, as a woman. You see, the jar he was forming wasn't turning out as he wished. So he kneaded me into a lump in order to start again. Well, we moved 6 times in a year and a half. I got to the point where I was afraid to hang a picture on the wall for fear it would just be scooped up and stuffed in a box again. But God is faithful. And he brought Bert and I to a place that is beyond anything we even thought existed. It's a turkey farm. And my whole life I've dreamed of living on a farm. Bert too. Not necessarily a turkey farm, but it's a farm. And little did I know that Bert had that secret desire too. You know, last year we were doing our taxes, and he goes, "Look there, Grace, under occupation. It says farmer." He's so pleased. You know, in all the pain, we didn't know it, but he was giving us our heart's desires. But when the dust settled, and I had a picture on my wall again, everything that I had made of myself, that I had gloried in, that I had hidden behind, well, it was all gone. And I remember thinking, Lord, what do I do, Father? Bert and the children, Lord, what do I do? And then he began to help me see me and what I am. I'm just the clay. And he's always whispering. But I began to hear the master potter like I have never heard him before in my life. And he said, Grace, darling, trust me. Just rest. Lean on me. Darling, simply love me. And let me do everything in you and for you and through you. I will accomplish all my desire for you, and I will fulfill yours. Indeed, truly, undeniably, none of those that put their trust in him will ever be disappointed. Behold, as the clay is in a potter's hand. Did you get that? It just is. That means to be. And just being in his hands makes me priceless. Behold, as the clay is in a potter's hand, so are you in mine. Watch. But I know you know what God says in Genesis. But in Genesis, it says that he formed us out of the dust of the earth. Dust, it's nothing. I mean, we walk on it. He says that the wind blows on it. And its place doesn't even acknowledge that it was even there. But he's very, very mindful that we are but dust. But I know that it wasn't just dust that he made us out of. You know how I know? I'm a potter. He added water. Only the water that he added flows from the throne of God, clear as crystal. And he says that everything where the water goes lives. Well, I'm going to leave this and get to some that's been worked a little bit more. You'll be waiting a long time here. But he says that before he laid the foundation of the earth, he dreamed of me. You know, when I was sitting in the airport yesterday, all these people walking back and forth, and nobody knew I was there. Nobody noticed me. Nobody saw me. And Jesus whispered and he said, I see you, Grace. Before I said, let there be light, I dreamed of you. Everything about me he planned out special. And he approved of me as his chosen instrument. Well, he was forming me inside of my mother's womb. He called me Grace. And he set me apart. He consecrated me and appointed me as his mouthpiece to his people. Well, I don't know why, but he gave me this little itty-bitty girl's voice. My daughter out in San Diego, she tells me that I sound like Minnie Mouse on the phone. Well, that gives a person a lot of confidence with which to speak, doesn't it? But the clay is often stiff as it sits and waits for me. So I'll work it a little bit to work out any air bubbles and make it more flexible. And ladies, and you men back there too. If any of you have flabby triceps, take out pottery. I beat my 17-year-old nephew a few years ago at arm wrestling because of this. I can even hold my own against Bert left-handed. But that poor nephew of mine, he was the captain of his swim team. He was absolutely humiliated when it was over. Can you imagine being beaten by your 45-year-old aunt? I challenged him to a rematch about a year later. He had a couple of his friends with him, and he wouldn't even look me in the eye. Believe me, kneading bread dough is a piece of cake after that. But I know that this doesn't look like anything to you. I really don't think we look like very much to each other either a lot of times. But to the potter, this right now is a picture. And this wedge of clay is the pitcher's handle. You know, in Psalm 40, David says, I cried unto the Lord, and he heard my voice, and he lifted me up out of the miry pit. Well, guess where clay comes from? It says that he lifted me up out of the miry pit, and he set my feet upon a rock. Well, in Jeremiah's day, this was a rock. It was a stone wheelhead. He lifted me out of the pit and set my feet upon a rock, making my footsteps firm. Can I move this out just a little bit? Or no, I can, okay. Sometimes I feel like a linebacker. But no, the first thing that has to happen with the clay is it needs to yield to me. It needs to become centered in my will, in my hand. This is what you might call a self-centered lump of clay. It's kind of doing its own thing, isn't it? But the only trouble is the clay can't yield by itself. The potter has to help it. So I'll wedge my elbow into my thigh as a brace. And then with the palm of my hand, I will raise the clay up and I will push it down. And I'll raise it up and I'll push it down. And what's happening is the pressure is directed towards the innermost place of the clay. And as it's raised up, the unyieldedness within is drawn out. And he says, don't be afraid, for I know the plans that I have for you. They're plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Little one, your walls are continually before me, and I have inscribed your name on the palm of my hand. Just relax. Let go. Just be still. Be still and know that I am God. Some lumps are just a little bit more stubborn than other lumps. But I don't mind waiting. I will just raise it up and push it down and wait. Because of what I have planned for it. Now it's quiet. Now it's not fighting me, resisting me anymore. Now I can go ahead with what I have planned for it. You know, the potter has specific terms that he refers to the different parts of the vessel with. God calls us his vessels, and we have the same parts. This is called the body. This is the foot. We've got them too. This is the neck. Some of us don't have much of a neck, and others of us have lots of neck. This is the mouth, and this right here is called the lip. But the interior of the vessel, this part here, the potter literally refers to this area as the heart of the vessel. Well, this little lump of clay, it's out of the pit. It's on the rock. It's in the potter's hand. It's yielded. But it doesn't have a heart. The potter has to give it one. So with my thumbs together, I'll pierce directly into the center of the clay, giving it a heart. He says, I'm going to remove your heart of stone, and I'm going to give you a heart of flesh. There, it's got a heart. It's a little bitty one. Big, fat, thick walls that won't hold very much. But in Psalm 119, David says, Lord, and I say too, Lord, I'm going to